He has come under criticism. He insists that his choices were about protecting key players from injury with the games that lie ahead. And this is what he had to say when it was put to him about the inexperienced squad that he did choose to take on Crystal Palace. He said, we don't have such a big squad as people might tell. There was so much focus on the amount of money we spent. People all of a sudden think we have 25 players available, but we mainly have 20 players. Then we have 4 injuries. I only have one right fullback, Connor Bradley, as an example. Every time I had to play him twice in 3 days or 3 times in 7 days last season, I had to take him off with a hamstring injury or something else. Are you willing to take that risk with such a big week coming up?
They spent a fortune in the summer. Yeah, they've got some injuries. They haven't got the most in the Premier League. You know, you've got Tottenham with 10 injuries at the moment to some key players. You got Fulham with 7 less of a squad. You got Brighton with 7 players out. They're expecting Gravenberg back potentially for the weekend. They are expecting Isak potentially back for the weekend, and so he rested a bunch of his first teamers. And he did play the kids, and we talked about this on Tuesday, I think, Stevie and I. We said we think he'll weaken the team because he's going to be thinking foremost about Aston Villa at the weekend. So I wasn't surprised, and I wasn't surprised Crystal Palace went quite strong because the cup competitions for them have become very important and quite successful, actually, FA Cup and Community Shield. And so that wasn't a surprise, but I think we're already hearing what we're hearing from Arne Slot isn't going to wash, I think, with a lot of people, bearing in mind they have got a big squad and he has got a lot of talent to be able to select from. And no club, no team coming into sort of November, December is sitting there, unless you're the luckiest manager alive, Shaq, is sitting there with, you know, every key player fit and available. Somebody's always dealing with something, and I don't think there's going to be much sympathy.
This is what Liverpool do. Liverpool play the kids in these competitions. You saw that in both cup competitions last season. You've seen it season on for God alone knows how long. The only difference is the form that Liverpool come into this cup tie in, that Arne Slot is having to answer for, and this, well, it doesn't help. I don't think it affects or should affect them in any way, but Arne Slot answering to that poor form and his selection choices, I just think adds more pressure to the team. I don't feel he needs to answer this. He doesn't need to address it. But for some reason, he keeps getting asked about it and he keeps answering it. And that, for me, is just piling on the pressure on an already under pressure starting 11.
I think the makeup of Liverpool's squad at the moment isn't as balanced as Slot would probably like it to be. Now, he obviously was involved in those transfer decisions in the summer, but he was by far, you know, he wasn't the only one. There's people above him who will have signed off on things and will have sat as a committee and made these decisions. Now, I think at the time when the Mark Gay deal fell through on deadline day, it felt like that was an error from Liverpool's part to let it get to that point where they ended up leaving themselves short. I think that was the big sort of glaring gap in the squad that a lot of people would have liked to have been filled. Now, there was an element of bad luck in the sense that Giovanni Leone, the other centre-back that they brought in, who looked very good on his debut against Southampton in the last round of the Cup, picks up an ACL injury and is now out for the season. So from potentially going into the season with 5 centre-backs, had Gay's deal gone through, they've now got 3. So there is an element with Arne Slot where that he's not wrong. I think there are areas in the squad that could have been bolstered in the summer and weren't. But ultimately, it's the squad that he's got now, and he's got to work with it. But I think in terms of the rotation, and as Craig sort of alluded to earlier, I think regardless of what would have happened last night, the big game and the big games are those 3 coming up: Aston Villa at the weekend, Real Madrid in the Champions League, and then Manchester City. I think regardless of what happened in that cup game, those 3 games would still be massive, and that is obviously where his priorities lie, and that is why he ultimately decided to go with that team that he went for last night. And whether he'll be vindicated for that decision depends on how well Liverpool do over these next 3 games.
Virgil van Dijk and Ibrahim Konate are not playing well, and you can maybe look at the full-backs outside them, and Kerkez is definitely struggling. But I've mentioned on here many times, I don't think Van Dijk's helping him as a captain. I really think he's kind of thrown him under the bus a little bit with his gesticulating to him in front of the crowd, and as a young player, it just drains your confidence. But there's no doubt himself, and particularly Konate, have not have not played well. For 7 months last year, Liverpool were pretty much flawless domestically. And so was Arne Slot. Whether it was on-field decisions or whether it was press conferences. And we all sat here and said, man, this guy speaks normally. And he speaks pretty truthfully. And he speaks a lot of common sense. And what we're seeing here is a manager who really for the first time in his Liverpool career as a manager has been asked a lot of questions. And he is going down the path that a lot of managers go down where a lot of it's kind of gobbledygook. You know, he talks about the right back and Frimpong's out and having to play Bradley 3 times in a week. You know, Shaq and I were sitting saying, you know, back in the day, Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's a week. That was the norm. That was the norm. You played on a Saturday, you played on a Wednesday, you played on a Saturday. That's not a big deal. Shouldn't be for these super fit players these days. And also, he's played Szoboszlai there, but also he could put Joe Gomez there. Joe Gomez has played right back 100 times. I know it's not ideal, but he could put Joe Gomez there. So there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff, I think, here that the manager's just trying to make an excuse. An excuse at the moment because he can't figure it out. He can't work out what his best team is. He's not been able to get Florian Wirtz in the side and working, so he took him out. I think he made a big boo-boo in 2 games, Chelsea and Man United, by playing Alexander Isak ahead of Ekitike. And I think most people shared that sentiment. But let me just tell you one thing. When he went down to Stamford Bridge, Arne Slot with this Liverpool team, and they got played off the park, they got outworked and they got outthought. And they deservedly got beat. Chelsea had 10 injuries that day. Chelsea had double the injuries Liverpool had. Chelsea had a makeshift back 4. Chelsea had 2 centre-halves that I don't think had ever played together, or certainly hadn't played together many times. So they had their own issues. So this is not a Liverpool thing. This is an Arne Slot needs to figure this out, and he needs to figure it out fast.
I think there will come a point, if these results keep on coming, that there will be questions asked. And, you know, he's at the moment, the club and the hierarchy are right behind him, but it's obviously difficult to stay behind a manager if they just can't win games. So it is a really decisive week. And I think just to add as well with what the guys were saying about the excuses and things like that, you know, I feel a little bit of sympathy for Slot in the sense, you know, I've been at a lot of his press conferences, both last season and this season, and actually I don't think his demeanour has been particularly different. I think when you're winning games and when you're losing games, the positives that, you know, last season about him being honest and giving tactical insight and things like that are now being interpreted as, oh, he's telling the opponents how to beat him. And so it's very difficult. You know, Ruben Amorim has been through it, Mikel Arteta has been through it. When you're not going through the best patch, everything that you say gets dissected. And I think that is maybe what he needs to be conscious of, because he's maybe creating headlines where it would be better to just maybe keep a little bit quiet, I think, at the moment.
No, he's not going anywhere. Arne Slot's not going. He could lose the next 3 games. He's not going anywhere.
But he has to win that next
Liverpool
game.
really act in a sort of knee-jerk. And they really have the kind of knee-jerk reaction to bad results. And the online fan base, I wouldn't give a toss about any of them. The actual fans that go to the game, the match-going fans, the ones with common sense, can see how good a manager he is. The problem is he's got to find a way to figure this out. It's not injuries that are meaning Mo Salah's not playing well. It's not injuries that he selected Alexander Isak over arguably the best and most dangerous player since the Community Shield, and Hugo Ekitike. Alexis McAllister hasn't played particularly well. He's had an injury, hasn't looked himself. Gravenberg hasn't quite looked himself. Szoboszlai's been shifted from pillar to post. The whole Wirtz thing's been well publicised. And I go back to it. The back 4, the 2 centre-halves, the real fulcrum of that back 4 haven't really played well this year. Van Dijk and Konate have struggled to control a back 4 that has changed full-back positions, whether it be Frimpong or Bradley or Szoboszlai or Kerkez. And, you know, there was even a point you thought, well, you know, maybe we'll have to bring Andy Robertson back in full-time to give Kerkez a rest. But Andy Robertson, he played yesterday, but he played for Scotland a couple of weeks ago and he really struggled. So that's not an easy one, just to say to Kerkez, you know, I'm going to just give you a little bit of a rest to try and get your confidence back. He's having to throw him in and he's struggling, the young man. I mean, he can't wait to pass the ball 5 yards. And you can sense it in the crowd. And when a player senses it in the crowd, he becomes even more nervous when he gets on the ball, and it's even worse for him when your skipper is giving you a grilling. So it really is a difficult time, and they face Villa on the weekend, who will just sit back like a cat waiting to pounce.